Good evening, everybody. Professor Mani, as always, every Wednesday, welcoming all of you to this learning journey that BMA has initiated in the form of Wednesday Wisdom webinars. Very happy to welcome our distinguished speaker for today, Ms. Raji Iyengar, and she is, of course, the Managing Director of DLT-Ledgers. More about her, we will tell you. This is a special session which has an international flavor, not only because she's going to talk about cross-border business, cross-border activities, but also using the entire concept of blockchain as the base. She, of course, crosses borders to go to Singapore, where she is normally based, and currently being in India at this point in time. Thank you, everybody, for being punctual. I think you're getting used to the fact that BMA lectures start on time and close on time. And therefore, I really appreciate that punctuality, especially coming from a professor like me, who's always worried that students should come on time. So we are all set with about 40 good boys and girls here on time, and delighted that we have Raji Iyengar here to do this session with us. Thank you so much for having so readily agreed to be part of this BMA learning journey. Of course, the catalyst for this entire learning journey was none other than our beloved former president, Sri Suresh Matre, who himself did a wonderful session for us in a Wednesday webinar earlier, where he talked about the TCS story. Thank you, Suresh, for always being with us in BMA to guide us, motivate us, support us. And on that note, may I request you to please introduce Raji to us before I ask her to start this session.
Thank you, Professor Mani. Raji actually has a huge, varied biodata, but I'll start off by claiming that she's a friend, and we are both members of a CEO forum, where I had the pleasure of first meeting Raji. Raji flits between Singapore and Chennai and Mumbai. Currently, we were lucky to catch her while she's in Mumbai. DLT-Ledgers is a smaller startup compared to her earlier job, which was with IBM Global Tech, where currently she's a managing director based out of Singapore. Her earlier job, IBM, was both out of India and Singapore, where she was a channel leader and headed international sales for Asia Pacific, India, Southeast Asia. What's amazing about her background is that though her function is sales and marketing, she has worked in IBM Global MNC and a startup. She's worked in Asia Pacific, India, and she's handled both technical sales services as well as actual sales across a wide variety of organizations. So multicultural, multi-organizational size, multifunctional is the best way to describe Raji. Today she talks about blockchain, but I know that we've been discussing, and she's going to look at it from a business point of view. So blockchain as a concept, of course, all of us know, but how she's using it for cross-border and increasing security safety. And I also want to welcome Jules, who's a colleague from DLT Ledgers, who is also joining us straight from Singapore. So both of them, hearty welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, over to you, Raji. We are eagerly looking forward to learn from you. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Mani. Thank you, Suresh. That was a welcome that was actually scared me a little. You went into details of that. So once again, everyone, my name is Raji Iyengar. I am the Managing Director for DLT-Ledgers, currently based out of Mumbai, and I'll continue to be here for some time. And I look after this region, India and South Asia. And as we were introduced, Jose, my colleague, is based out of Singapore, and he looks after many functions within DLT-Ledgers. So without much ado, let me just go to my presentation, and please let me know if you can see it. And
yes.
Great. So thank you again. I represent DLT-Ledgers, which is a cross-border trade platform, and I will talk about it a little more. But before we get into all that, let's look at what blockchain is. And I'm not going to make this very technical. We will start with just what blockchain is all about. And to begin with, I want to say this is that many people think it's a very daunting thing, but it is not. I would say that blockchain is more a philosophy than technology. And we need to understand the philosophy, the underpinning philosophy of this. And then very soon after that, we'll be able to look at what kind of use cases can be, both in the business world, even in not-for-profit world and government sections, and many kinds of use cases. So blockchain, as you can see in the picture, and as the word goes, it's a compound word. Here the blocks are the records of data. So it's got three elements. The block has three elements. It has data, which is the records. It has a hash, which is a very unique identity for that particular block. And the third element is the previous hash. And these blocks are all linked together, and that's how you see the chain. So what happens is that with one block, with the unique data that you have and the unique hash that you have, it's almost like a fingerprint that you have, the uniqueness. And like I said, this is linked with the previous hash. So what it means is that if you change one part of anything in this data, it will not sync because the previous block is connected to this through that hash. So any attempt to alter a single block breaks this chain, right? So hence this can be easily detected, whatever change is made in the block, and therefore it gets very secure as well. Finally, and all this, so what I'm going to talk to you today about is a private secure blockchain network. There are public blockchain networks and there are community-based ones as well, but we will focus on the private secure network where there are different users, different parties who all come in as the node. Now, in this, there must be a consensus mechanism, essentially ensuring that all parties in this approve of the change that is made in this block. Unless they approve of that, and agree to it, and there is a consensus there, all the involved parties agree on the validity of the data that has been, that has been changed, nothing can move. The chain breaks if they don't, there's no consensus to it. So, and blockchain is also based on a decentralized DLP ledgers, as we call it, decentralized ledger. And each of these, what it means is that basically the database is not central. So all your ERP and other systems that we have today, even the banking systems, the database is central. Here the database is distributed. Yeah. So in a way, I would say that, because of, like I said, if you change something, the authenticity is not there, it breaks the change, and you need consensus to make any kind of data changes. The records are immutable. So you understand the importance now of this now, right? So I would say blockchain is actually, it's a democratizing technology in that it makes everyone as equally accountable and equally in control. Yeah. So in short, I would say it's an honest to goodness, peer-to-peer kind of technology that works for us. So like I said, I'm not going to get into too much of technicalities here. And we'll just look at, the benefits of it, as I mentioned. So it's a tamper-proof, immutable, auditable chain of events that is happening. It authenticates the provenance of those events at source, right? And it can integrate with your existing ERP that is there, existing any kind of homegrown systems also that is there. And it promotes a trust and collaboration between multiple parties. And that's what I'm going to talk about today, especially when you're talking of cross-border trade and you're looking at parties who you don't know. You're probably interacting with them for the first time, right? So that these are the places where the use case becomes even more stronger. So, and like I said, so if there is an existing ERP between one party and the other party, this platform, this blockchain, can sort of interconnect these two parties as well, these two ERPs. So in a way, I would say it's something like a inter-enterprise resource planning, IERP, you can call it. So that's what it is. Now let's bring the relevance to blockchain and trade here. Now this happened, right? Whether we like it or not, I know a lot of webinars I've been attending starts with this, the pandemic situation, and whether we like it or not, we have to address it. So we have to acknowledge it, right? So because of this pandemic that happened, as we all know, so there was obviously disruption in trade, right? There was disruption in supply chain, there was disruption in trade. World merchandise trade fell 14% in volume and almost about 20%, 21% in value, I would say, in Q2. And but the steepest declines, of course, were recorded in Europe and North America. Asia was definitely affected, but not as much as what the records show. And the World Bank, WTO, all of them have said, IMF also have all released forecasts that showing significant slowdown that's going to happen. And I think we can all feel it, right? So this is inevitable, and that's what it's going to be. But however, we will look at, what is it that we will do to ensure that we don't fall too much of a prey to this thing that has happened right now. So if you look at the global trade declines, like I said, say by 22%, companies will need to grow their market share by 29%. So growing from a 17% market share to 21% requires a 4% gain in the overall market share, right? So that's a 29% gain. So what is it that your business doing? What are we doing today as in digitization part of your trade to achieve a 29% gain in market share? So it's important that we all get ready with that, and don't take our word for it. WF sometime back mentioned that the pandemic is strengthening the case for using blockchain and supply chains. Similarly, there are several other write-ups in the news that you would see. There is a growing movement globally and supporting blockchains. Deloitte, in fact, had put out a paper sometime back, a couple of months ago, saying how blockchain is back in the C-level discussions these days. Sometime back, I mean, it was there a couple of years ago, when the topic was hot, and then Bitcoin happened, and then everything went down and went quiet, and there was this apprehensiveness about getting back into blockchain. But when you look at the use cases that it can be used for, especially in today's times, it has just come back in full steam, I would say. So yeah. So these are several write-ups, and where everybody is acknowledging this. DLT-Ledgers has been working with Singapore government, so we are sort of funded also by Enterprise Singapore. Here's a quick snapshot of us. So what is DLT-Ledgers? We are a private, secure network, and I will talk about it in a minute and explain what happens when trade happens between two jurisdictions, so the players that come in. So we are basically a private secure network that brings in various parties to transact securely. Here's a quick snapshot. There are 4,000 plus users already on it, and some of these names you would recognize, Schneider and IFCO, Wipro, etc. And the important part of the trade function is banks, right? So there are 45 banks already in the network, and we will talk about how some of them have had really great success working with their clients, DBS and others. So we have DBS, Stanchart, Rabobank in Singapore, Asia Pacific. We have some Australia, New Zealand banks. We have banks in Middle East, ADCB. And in India, we've just begun in India, by the way, operations. So we're pretty new here. And ICICI Bank is already on, and we're talking to several others as well. And then, as you can see, TDB on the Africa side, etc. We are not really, specific to any specific industry. So we work across, we are both product agnostic as well as industry agnostic, which means customers using our platform can execute trade, be it trade of ice creams or cashews or bauxite or coal, palm oil, what have you. So any kind of import, export, any kind of pharmaceutical industry is another great example. So all that. We are headquartered in Singapore, as I said, and we have, businesses across different countries and different regions. Now, when you look at any trade is complicated between two jurisdictions, as I said. So when I say we are digitizing trade execution, what exactly do we mean? So when you look at any trade, there are four things that happen in a trade, right? There is flow of goods, there is flow of contracts, there's flow of documents, and there is flow of money, definitely. And what we are doing here is that once you have agreed to, digitize the manual process, and you need to look at digitizing each element of it. So digitizing the sales contract, digitizing your trade documents, digitizing, payment and settlement, etc. All this become very, very important for the ease of trade to happen between two countries. Payment especially, like I said. So yeah. Now, as I said, so when you look at any problem, any trade, these are the typical problems. And some of you are in the audience, if you are already into trade and large enterprise, supply chain and procurement, etc., you will appreciate what I'm saying here. So there's a lot of piles of paper documents used in trade, right? So you have thousands of emails and going back and forth between different parties. And these don't account for, they don't create any corporate memory. The phone calls made to different, to follow up on the status of trade, etc. There is no, invariably these go unrecorded, right? What kind of conversation you've had, different messages through WhatsApps, etc. So what we are doing here is bringing different parties together, like I said. So in any trade, there is a buyer, there is a seller, there is a buyer's bank, there's a seller's supplier's bank, there are shipping guys, transporters, logistics, certifying agencies that come into play, insurance companies that come into play. So ditledgers offers this kind of a platform, which is a private, independent, secure network, so that exchange of documents can happen pretty quickly on the platform. Who do we work with? As I said, largely traders and large enterprises, because when I say large enterprises, again, like I said, across industries. And we need to look at, like I said, from a banking perspective also. And I will come back to you and talk a little bit about why banks and what kind of initiatives that we are doing in Singapore with banks in a minute. The other parties, like I said, shipping companies, logistic companies, port authorities. Now in India, slowly there is discussion around port authorities also coming into play, and they are appreciating bill of lading, bill of lading. All these are discussions happening between various governments across the globe. Singapore government, Rotterdam government, and I will also talk about what we're doing there. Now, if you look at typical steps that is there in this whole trade that happens, you look at between, and I've taken an example here of between, let's say, Indonesia and India, and that could be a coal or palm oil or whatever. So contract is signed digitally and consented between parties on the platform, and then of course the buyer instructs his bank for the LC issuance part of it, and then the bank in India sort of opens the LC and looks at and advises whatever to the bank in Indonesia, etc. So again, I'm just re-emphasizing the part, and you probably cannot see it, it's not very visible and it's a busy slide, but we are talking about the different flow of goods and flow of documents, flow of contracts, etc., and how exchange of this happens. And like I said, it's quite complex when you look at it. So, and it's complex anyway, but given COVID times, it sort of complicates things even more, because, the initial part of COVID, there were no courier service available, documents had to move, lots of issues. The benefits that we have found by using, where customers have found, is that trade execution is cut from days to hours, obviously. And there is reduction in the financing costs, and I will again take examples of this. So if you look at a typical trade cycle, and if it's a long haul one, and I'll talk about an example of a customer who was shipping something from North America to Southeast Asia. So long haul trade cycles, shipment anyway takes about, 30 days, 45 days for the ship to come across. And the processing time for this is quite, it again takes time between different banks and exchanging of documents. And we found that there is a key benefit, by exchanging papers on the platform, the working capital cycle gets reduced. And this is actually classic examples. When I'm saying 25%, these are data that has come from customers. It's not a marketing slide. It is something that we have got from customers on this. Now look at the other side when it's a short haul trade cycle. Let's say there is something coming from Bangladesh to India or Sri Lanka to India. Shipment arrives earlier, 15 days, sometimes in 10 days, sometimes in a week's time. But the paper processing takes about 20, 25 days. So you can imagine, so paper processing is taking time. Goods have arrived. Many a times goods have arrived, they are in the docks, at the docks, and ships are here waiting to be discharged, demerit charges coming up on them. I'm sure you can identify with all these issues that I'm talking about. So not a happy situation, right? So, so this is what we were saying that, the platform that we are talking about for trade digitization is plug and play. Now, what do I say? What do I mean by plug and play is that each step has been designed to minimize friction between parties and automate the manual tasks. So when you look at the first step, so you look at the trade flow. So you set up the trade flow in the platform with the trade execution engine. So you leverage reusable smart contracts, which are powered by, and triggered tables. And so you reduce repetition of these things. And then you invite partners who are key to the party to come in and interact. They gain access via a secure login. These are all cloud-based. It's a node. It's a simple node assigned to the subscriber, which is the trader. And he brings in the different parties into this game. And they invite partners to participate in the platform at no cost. So I want to repeat this. So when you as a trader are subscribing to the platform and you bring your counterparty onto this platform, your party, your counterparty, your business partner does not pay anything. The bank does not pay anything to use the platform. So please encourage your banks to come and participate on these. And the good part is that you can track every step of the trade execution process. So therefore it creates visibility, right? So in the supply chain, and all this is again thanks to blockchain. So it creates visibility in your supply chain, which can support provenance tracking. It can support sustainability initiatives. It can, and by doing all this, there's obviously, there is favorable financing terms that you get. Yeah. And again, I wanted to mention that there are traders in Singapore who have come back to us and said that the banks are willing to fund them, finance them, because they are on a blockchain platform, because they know that there is authenticity in the trade that is happening. They are quite happy to fund. So they have come back and said that their funding, this thing has increased several folds, if I may say. Again, on when I said plug and play here, what I mean is that we have several modules, and these are all built on a framework, which is which is literally plug and play. As you can see, there are some 16 different frameworks, and I'm not going into the details of the product. Whoever is interested can reach out, and we were quite happy to discuss in details with respect to what your business would demand. But there are a few things I want to mention here is that whether it's fraud detection using AI and machine language, or it's the digital file cabinet, for example. Digital file cabinet is like a secure vault which the trader uses, and he has the document and he can share the document with people based on a need to know basis. This is where the consensus part of blockchain comes in. So for example, if I'm a trader and if I'm dealing with the shipping agent, the shipping agent need not necessarily know what the buyer's purchase order is, etc. For him, what is important is the bill of lading, right? So based on who needs to see what, the trader or the large enterprise has the ability to share that document accordingly. So, and then of course there is counterparty KYC and several other things, and you can literally go block by block. It's a very modular architecture, so blockchain is a journey. Don't try and do everything in it. Try and just get onto the minimum 2-3 parties is good enough for you to start the journey and experience it. Again, it's not very complicated. Don't go by the technology of blockchain, but just look at the application and see how you can easily transact using that platform. The key business drivers is obviously, like I said, to save time and money, and there is efficiency that comes in because of digitization. And like I said, each aspect of trade needs to be digitized. Now, and of course, the ERP integration and traceability, etc. Customers, of course, will see benefits as we spoke about from the productivity point of view, and banks will look at it from turnaround time and the visibility of trade flows. Now, for banks, it is important, and I want to quickly take a minute here to talk about the initiative that we were saying that we are doing with Singapore. Like I said, for Singapore government, Singapore is a trading hub. For them, it is extremely important that they really appreciate blockchain technology, and it's important, on containing fraud and things like that, right? Sorry. So what they have done is that we're working on an initiative with them called trade doc validation. What trade doc validation essentially is that so that there is no duplicate financing that happens. In most, duplicate financing is the most commonly debated issue in any global trade finance. One financial institution may not necessarily have the insight into what has been agreed by another, and many a times the same paper document is forged and presented for multiple banks, without the fear of being detected. So what trade doc validation is it's a collaborative bank and government-led initiative in Singapore, which runs on our platform, the ditledgers platform. And the sole purpose is to mitigate the risk of bad players, if I may say, for bad players securing multiple financing arrangements against a common underlying asset. So that's what trade doc validation is all about, and it's a combination of process, cryptography, methodology, and technology all coming together as one solution. It has been developed and with the benefit for all financial institutions in Singapore, with the cooperation of Enterprise Singapore, which is a government agency, and the Monetary Authority of Singapore, MAS, which is a regulatory body like what RBI is for us. Yeah. So different users have different incentives of this. And here are some of our customers who have shared what is the value they have got out of this. I don't want to read through all this. You definitely can read some of this, but I'll just mention that like I said, each one has their own this thing. Traders, obviously, because they can save the trade cycle time and also from saving cost, financing cost. And banks, like I said, is from the authentication, the validity, the double financing, all fraud detection, etc. So yeah, these are some of the things. AgroCorp International has been an early customer of ours, and they have done some amazing stuff using the blockchain platform. And this is something what they have shared. And I will later, if we have the time, I will also share a quick video about what AgroCorp and DBS had to share using the platform. But I just wanted to share one example of how this is a digitally enabled business benefit for winning market share from your competitors. And this is what, I wanted to share what AgroCorp had done. On early April, almost, I think it was around 1st of April, that AgroCorp and Cargill, the food guys, they executed their first bulk order, which is about 12 million wheat shipment, right from US, North America to Indonesia using the platform. And they could do this settlement. So the shipment obviously took, that long, as I shared in my previous slide. But they could, do with their settlement all in less than 5 days. Imagine in a COVID situation where papers are not moving, where goods moving itself is a challenge. But here, digitally, your papers have moved, your cash has been released, you can reuse your cash for another trade. So look at the advantage, using digitization in times like this. Like I said, digitization is not complex. Don't get into a very complex way of doing it. So, yeah. Here are some of the recent stories about us. Last week, we were on CNBC. I think a couple of days before, we were on CNBC in Singapore, because Singapore is digitizing key industry processes to become more resilient in the aftermath of COVID-19. And along with another government agency of Singapore, which is IMDA, there is a very interesting program, and I think I'll take a minute to share that program. What they are doing is they're encouraging the small and medium traders also to digitize. And in order to digitize that, they're saying that, they're ready to fund 90% of the cost of using a subscription of a platform like this. And the end customer ends up paying just about 10%. Look at the kind of advantages that is being given to the trader to incentivize him to ensure that he digitizes. Once he digitizes, obviously, then, a lot of things become simpler to track and validate and things like that. So that was one of the examples. If I may, I'll just quickly play this. Let me know if it's visible here. This is, it's less than a minute, so which is why it's okay.
Please go ahead.
This? Yeah.
No, we are not able to see any video as yet.
Hello?
We are not able to see the video.
Oh, okay. Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, that's
Is
fine.
the first one that you're playing there, which shows video?
My slide, yeah. That's okay. You can see my slide now, right?
Correct.
Yeah. Anyway, it's on YouTube. You can go and look at DBS and AgroCorp, and you will see several good stories there. And they're very interesting. That's why I wanted you to see it. So, yeah. Sorry, I don't want to go into that. Sometimes we have these technology challenges also.
No, not to worry. Your presentation is on. You can go back to the slide
Okay,
that you wish.
I'll go back to the slide, yeah. Okay, so we were talking about success stories. Yeah. Again, so I just have another couple of slides and then we can take questions. So why adopt DLT-Ledgers platform? Obviously, it's a fast-growing independent company, and we are free of consortium ties. So it doesn't slow us down, and we are supported by multiple government agencies, like I said. We've transacted more than 3 billion trade volumes, already successfully. Like I said, I just want to emphasize on the platform, on this, that it's a ready platform. It's a production grade platform. So you can get onto it in less than 24 hours, literally. And you will be able to sort of, we'll be able to assign a node, etc. All that can be done within 24 to 48 hours. So when I say of speed of digitization, we are literally talking of that. You may not be able to see the accolades that's on the right side of the slide, but it's quite a few accolades that we have had. Like I said, Enterprise Singapore, IMDA, both of them are government agencies which are supporting us. And again, needless to say, why I can again take the same example of the advantages that customers have. Now there are several use cases. Digitizing cross-border trade processes is what we discussed about right now. This is our most commonly used use case, and this is what the platform was originally designed for. But subsequently, there have been quite a few use cases that is there. Part of trade digitization process, some customers, both traders and banks, are specifically interested in the LC digitization part. So this is where the blockchain platform comes in from a banking perspective, and there have been some significant advantages that some of these banks have. I've not named the banks here, but that's the kind of use case we have seen. So they were able to streamline key trade finance operations using this independent platform. This is a very great supply chain visibility, like I mentioned, especially for provenance tracking. Now imagine if, so to give you an example of supply chain and provenance tracking, if it's a chocolate trader, as we all know, chocolate from Ivory Coast demands always a premium. So if you can trace and see where this chocolate has come from, you're ready to pay that much more from a trading point of view, I'm saying. So these are some of the advantages. We recently undertook one of some work with a large house in Australia, which to track the provenance and sustainability within their aluminium supply chain in Australia, which again was an excellent use case that I'm showing here. So several use cases, like I said, for banks, for traders, supply chain, cross-border trade, etc. This is our vision for trade finance. We are trying to digitize trade at 3 levels, I would say. The trade platform from a company level point of view, which is the enterprise digitization, like I said. Then there is the finance sector level, where we do have the SmartFin, which at some point later we'll go through the product discussions, whoever is interested. And of course, at a country level, the validation, the trade doc validation. And with that, so that's all about Singapore. So we've just started here. What is it that we are looking for with your support in India, dear customers, is that obviously grow people and grow business here. Grow business with authenticity, grow business, in the right way, grow trade in the right way, reduce the frauds that are happening as much as possible. Of course, increase the number of trades going in and out of India using the platform. That's one of the visions that I have, of course, and win trust and accolades as we have won in other countries. Really looking forward to work along with the government here and the local bodies here to win this. Talking of this, I just wanted to say that in India, there have been quite a few opportunities and quite a few initiatives that I'm seeing some states doing. Telangana has done on land registry. West Bengal, I was in a webinar the other day with West Bengal. They've done some good work using blockchain on, birth certificates, death certificates. There are some who are doing on, of course, on driving license and all. They're also looking at, there's another use case which often doesn't get mentioned is using blockchain for donation management or looking at non-profits. Non-profits get funding from various places. So how are the funds being utilized in what project, how much has been invested, etc. So tracking of all that, again, in a very authentic way is what, blockchain can be used for. There are several good use cases. I'll just end with a couple of slides. So how do you get started on this digitization journey if you're talking with us? It's a simple 2-3 steps. So we just sign an NDA because there are a lot of information exchange that we share. The customer also shares a lot of information, so I'm sure they would want us to sign that. Based on that, we look at certain retro documents from your side, and we can, demo the digitization of trade operations, both internally and externally, based on what is relevant to you. So those retro documents are very useful. And of course, we look at the commercials and get ready to start your digital trade initiative in India. That's about it from me, Suresh and Professor Mani. I ran through some of the slides, but happy to discuss with them one-on-one who is interested. So
certainly.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I think that was a wonderful overview of what blockchain can achieve. And it became more interesting when you presented so many live case studies of what has actually happened. There are a lot of questions in the chat box. Jose, would you like to take them up, or would you need my help? We are open with both. Are you able to see the questions in the chat box, Jose, or would you like me to read them out for you?
Yeah, well, I think you need to unmute me.
You are unmuted.
Are you able to hear me?
Yeah,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Oh, fine, yeah, perfect. Raji, you did an amazing job, contained the conversation so well. So I think we have few questions, Raji, on the chat box. So
Okay.
the first question is from Jagmohan Rishi, is asking how can blockchain help us in tracking the spurious medicine? It's about the counterfeit medicines, I guess, that you are mentioning. Yes, we have, the answer is a straight yes, we can, but it all depends upon the supply chain, the physical supply chain that the pharmaceutical industry currently operates. There's a lot of regulatory controls over that. So, you know, when we definitely the technology is an enabler. So, you know, it can actually do that. And we had worked with a couple of companies in the pharma sector to start a pilot on tracking these counterfeit medicines, so that you know, when you scan the QR code on the medicine at the pharmacy, you are able to identify whether that is a spurious one, or, you know, is it a counterfeit one, or it's real, with the batch number of the factory, you know, where it was produced, and yeah, the date of manufacture, and all of those being visible. So that's initiative which the pharma industry is taking up. It's again industry consensus that ultimately matters.
Yeah.
Does that answer the question? Yeah.
In fact, I just want to add
the
here,
second question.
sorry, I just wanted to add here, Jose, is that, like you mentioned, you know, so technology is just an enabler. So, and that's the easiest thing to do. But what we need along with technology is also two other things, which is the industry adoption. So we are really looking forward to the pharma industry in India also to sort of, and there's tremendous benefits for pharma industry. So if you in the audience are one of that, do come back to us. So it's, second is the industry adoption, and third, of course, is the regulatory board and the local government, you know, that would allow. So these are three things that are essential. Sorry, go back to the other question. Yeah.
So there's a question from.
Yeah, Jagmohan, go ahead.
I had a follow-up question on that.
Yeah.
Will blockchain alone will be able to help us in tracking this, you know, counterfeit, or we'll need a combination of IoT or AI and ML together to, you know, do it?
Absolutely, great question. So, you know, yes, so, you know, when we look at a solution, we are actually not limiting ourselves to blockchain alone. Blockchain is one of the DLT solutions. If you actually look at the distributed ledger technologies that is catching up, it's not just blockchain. Blockchain is one of the distributed ledger technology. There is, you know, artificial intelligence, the natural language processing. This all permit machines to make mistakes, and then, you know, human we can't tolerate, but we allow the machines to make mistakes and then, you know, correct the course. So it's kind of, you know, it takes time for them to create a knowledge base, which can, for example, you know, with some of the banks that we're working, the kind of knowledge base in terms of what will be the kind of data that flows and information that flows, creating that as a benchmark to check on compliance will take close to 1 to 3 years. So we are talking about a journey here. It's not something that you can like plug and play when we talk about an NLP or an AI or an machine learning. you're allowing a machine to learn over a period of time, and then you're course correcting it so that at some given point you will have accuracy of about 90 to 95%. When you start off, maybe you start at 30%. So
and if I may add,
the question.
I just wanted to add that, as you mentioned, it's on the journey. It's a journey, and blockchain today is at a place where, if I may say, what internet or cloud was some time back. And the platform that we are talking about here sort of incorporates all of this. So it's cloud-based. It has got machine learning and AI as part of, the platform, which I said as a, in the modules that is available. So it's all into one. So it'll be difficult to segregate one from this. So you will need machine learning. Yes, your question is absolutely right on that.
Okay, there's another interesting question. Can the government get access to such blockchain deals?
Blockchain deeds, is that what the
Deals,
question?
deals.
Yeah.
Yes.
So like I said, there are different kinds of blockchains. So one is the public one, and which is Ethereum based, and I'm not getting into that. So public blockchain is where the participant or the node is an anonymous thing. So it may not be very safe. So I don't know where the question is coming from. But if you're looking at the private secure network, which is part of your trade thing, no, nobody else has access to it. You are in control of your room right now.
Okay. Shankar,
but in one of the slides, sorry, in
No
one
problem.
of the slides that I had mentioned, where we are talking about the benefits, etc., we are talking about how not just the banks, but also the auditors, etc., you will have proof of all that is transacted in the value chain of your trade. Sorry. Yeah.
Okay. Mr. Shankar has one or two questions. I'd appreciate if he can share them with Raji and Jose to enable a discussion.
I think there is one more, Professor Mani, there is a couple of questions here.
Yeah, that's right. They have come from Shankar. I'm requesting him to take up the question and share his view. Go ahead, Shankar. No, you're not audible as yet. No, not yet.
Oh.
We'll give him a minute, otherwise I'll read it out.
Yeah. In the meantime, there is a few.
Yeah, I can see a couple of other questions here.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I think there's a very interesting one on farm to fork. Jose, you want to take that?
Yeah.
Yeah, tracking farm to fork is a cryptocurrency to transact on DLT. Yeah, so we have done a lot of real cases on tracking from farm to fork. We have been engaged by the World Trade Organization to carry out the initial pilot, and then we went live with what we would call it as a provenance tracking on and food safety, which looks from the farm gate all the way to the retail outlets. So how does this happen? This is using multiple technologies, like earlier that was mentioned, where you have IoT and other sensors, RFIDs, which are forming part of the solution. So imagine today you're going to a KFC outlet and asking for a chicken which is GMO free. How do you ensure that the chickens are GMO free or hormone free? So here KFC had a requirement which was given to Royal D House, which is one of the largest animal feeds company. And now when Royal D House wanted to ensure that they provide the solution which is giving food safety ultimately to KFC, when they pick up the chickens from the slaughterhouses, they looked at an end-to-end solution. So they started with the animal feed which they give to the chickens when it is once the egg is hatched and the chickens are handed over to the farmers. We started tracking them right from the farmer point, where the chickens are fed with the feeds, and then the history of medical medicines that were provided to them on the health check, that was captured, and all of that flows into a blockchain, and the records get immutable as one of the benefits that was highlighted. So from there it goes to the processing or the slaughterhouses, where after the chicken grows to a certain level, and that was tracked from there till it reaches a outlet for consumption by a consumer. The same thing for piglets was replicated, so that the entire food chain could be tracked right from the farm all the way to the outlet. I mean, this is one of the use cases that we have done in real time.
Yeah.
Just to answer that question. And in terms of cryptocurrencies,
sorry,
yeah.
Do you wanted to also mention the farm fresh stack, the app thing here? Do you want to talk about?
Yeah, so we have also tied up with Farm Fresh, which is one of the marketplaces in India, which is predominantly popular in the southern part of India. So what they've done is they have about 27,000 farmers on there as a marketplace. And once the transaction is agreed upon, like the buy and the sell is agreed upon in a marketplace, then they have to connect with the banks. They have to, because some of them are aggregators who want to export it out. So what the platform allows to do is that these farmers could become contract farmers to large enterprises overseas who do the procurement in bulk to be supplied to, say, companies like Nestle or the Cadbury's of the world, who buy these as raw material inputs. So the source is India. The farmers get a view.
Sorry, I just wanted you to mention that. So Jose, we tease him Professor Money. We call in our organization we call Professor Jose, because he can take a full lecture on supply chain on this, and he can go on for 2 hours. So yeah.
All right. I will come back to one or two questions which Shankar had mentioned, which are very interesting.
Sure.
Is there an international agency that authenticates a BC system? That's a blockchain system. How does it work? And an extension to that question is, if I were to do business with China and other SE countries, is blockchain possible?
Absolutely possible. So anyway,
so if you can put some light on both these. Yeah.
Correct. So there is, it's not an international agency that is required here. It's about the strength of the network that is created on blockchain. Now, it's like, you're joining you're taking the membership of a club. So when you're joining, say, a platform like ditledgers, what you're creating is your own network. So as a private large enterprise, you're creating your network of suppliers and your network of customers onto a blockchain platform. So here, the strength of the network is based on the participants who join in. So if a large enterprise wants to digitize their trade, for example, then they are bringing their ecosystem partners to be part of that network. So you have banks, you have logistics companies, you have insurance companies, you have all of the suppliers who is going to.
Yeah. So maybe we should talk about the trade trust, the notary part of,
Yeah. So here, in terms of authentication and validation, there are, as Raji was rightly mentioning, there are 4 flows. Now, in terms of the money flow, you have to get it examined and validated with the banks. So with the banks in the network, add strength to the authentication and validation. But in terms of international cross-border transfer, if you need a nodal body to actually come as an independent party to authenticate a transaction, we have something which is developed in Singapore is called a trade trust. Trade trust is like a notifier, notary, who validates a transaction. So what happens is that anything that originates from ditledgers or any other source could be validated through a hash that is generated by traders. Like Raji was mentioning earlier, there's a public blockchain build platform, which is on a Ethereum base. So what happens is that when you want to have a document